Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, first of all, I've got a new Substack over at theamericanclassroom.substack.com. Recommend you check that out. It's titled The Surveillance State in American Schools, the COVID Trojan Horse, and Student Data Harvesting. This is one of those subjects, of course, that I've brought up on the show before. And it's a subject that Vanessa Hurst and I discussed when she was a guest on the show numerous times a couple of years ago. Again, having to do a great deal with the Chromebooks and Google as an entire application, and then, of course, foreign companies and even domestic companies all helping fund the data harvesting of children. And again, certainly starting in preschool age. And this is not an accident, and this is something that, again, they're trying to do for the youngest individuals that exist in America, and then track them throughout their entire educational career, so to speak, and well into college. What people don't understand is that this is being weaponized against these children. Their identities are being stolen. They're being tracked. They're being traced. They're being set up to have retail businesses reach out to them, and algorithms pop up in their feeds when they're on the internet, and endless other things. Not to mention, there's the child trafficking aspect of all of it, rather, where these groups and these companies, in particular the companies that are creating all of this software, are selling this information to the highest bidder. Again, your average American K-12 school employee does not know this. But the thing that I've brought up on the show, and you know this also, is that 3-letter agencies in the CIA are directly attached to American K-12 schools, and certainly the larger ones. It doesn't mean that they're not involved in the smaller ones. They certainly are. And again, they may not be on the books as a paid employee, even as a K-12 school district member, or again, a school teacher or administrator within the district. They may just be a contact point outside of the actual school district itself, and then they're told to communicate with individuals inside the district, again, whether that be through so-called professional development or technology integration or whatever it is. And then before you know it, these technology tools enter these school buildings without question. No one questions them. No one questions the morality of any of it. They don't question the validity of it, and they don't even question whether or not it even needs to exist. Which again should show people that this is not a business of thinking people. Again, the so-called education quote-unquote business is not for the thinking individual, and it's not for the thinking group. These individuals are a vessel. They're a trash can of all of these tools and games and gimmicks and procedures, which again makes them easily manipulative and manipulated. And then at the exact same time, without turning any of these technological programs away, they end up becoming the victims of the very thing that they allow. So in the Substack article, there are actually far too many of these programs that exist. Some of them are very specific to a district or even neighboring districts, and then others are global. And unfortunately, some of these school districts that adopt these technology platforms, and of course they're all data harvesting and data mining. And as I said, of course, even preschool students, which is an absolute abomination, including their pictures, of course, and any other personal information that they may gather on these individuals. But what's made it perverse now within the business is you have human beings reading these so-called algorithms or these programs that take grades, behaviors, the whereabouts of the student, their attendance, their family, a number of different things. Any special ed paperwork that they're on, whatever it may be. And it essentially tracks out a student's future. And it tells an individual, a human, through a computer, what that individual is likely to do, or what job they're likely to have in the future, or what they may or may not be interested in, and a number of other things. It's all artificial intelligence, and none of it is good. And unfortunately, it's tricking the human being that exists within these buildings into reading and looking at their own computer screen or their tablet or whatever it is that they're looking at where this program or these programs exist, and then the human just believes it. And then they'll point at the program on their screen and say, well, the program that we use tells Billy that he's going to end up here and he's doing this, which means we need to have him do this. And it's sold to people and school districts itself as being a tool that will make things easier for them. This is also a trick. It doesn't make anything easier. It's one more thing for them to do. It's one more thing for them to monitor. And what it really does, of course, is it takes out the human element. It takes out the ability of the school employee to actually think and critically think about a student as an individual or even a group of students within an environment. So what you're watching really with these kinds of surveillance programs or these violence deterrent programs, so they think, and all of this other stuff, again, whether it has to do with grades, behavior, a number of different things, you're watching the convergence and the replacement of both. Well, you're watching the convergence, I should say, of man and machine, but then you're watching the replacement of the human being with the machine. And that's what artificial intelligence ultimately seeks to do. Now, you may recall, and I've brought this up before on the show, and I certainly brought it up at the time, which I found remarkably fascinating. And then, of course, I thought to myself, okay, I know what's going on here. I know what this is. It was in 2022, I believe. It was 2022. In the late winter, early spring months is when the AI rollout really occurred. And again, this was one of those tools that was waiting in the shadows from the COVID lie that was inside of the COVID Trojan horse. There are many things inside of that COVID Trojan horse, and this was one of them. And so what ended up happening is in very short order, school districts all across the nation, including teacher education professors and everyone else, immediately panicked when it came to artificial intelligence, and rightfully so. They said this is going to create a massive, fraudulent, plagiaristic platform, essentially, where students will be able to look up answers or ask a question onto their phone and then immediately find the answer. Or they can open up an app and then immediately find the answer to a particular test question, or even have a computer write an entire paper for them without anybody knowing that the entire paper is actually written by an AI system rather than the human being themselves. So they immediately started having professional development on not using AI and how it's plagiaristic and it's going to be a big problem and a management problem and 1,000 other things. It wasn't 3 or 4 months later that the entire business did a total 180. They completely came around on it, and they said, well, wait a minute, artificial intelligence can be good, and we need to implement it as much as humanly possible, and it can be a teaching tool, and teachers can rely on it, and here's how to use it in the classroom. And then all of a sudden, the professional development rather changed, and then schools started to immediately adopt it, and adopt even more technological tools, not just within the classroom, but district-wide. And districts themselves started to adopt this, and of course, they get kickbacks for adopting this kind of technology. That was not accidental. That 180, as I've said before on the show, was not accidental. That was clearly a CIA directive from numerous NGOs and the CIA and these companies all working together to send out a very similar memo to everybody, which is, we're going to adopt AI and these technology tracking systems for behavior, grades, attendance, and everything else. And there isn't anything that you can do about it. That this is just the way that it is. And don't worry, we're going to tailor all of this to student safety and well-being and academic success, and we promise this is going to make things easier and better and blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, because they don't have a choice, because school administrators are lackeys, as I say frequently within the entire article, they themselves are not thinking people. If they even so much as raise a question of morality or whether or not this is even ethical, they're shown the door. Somebody pulls them aside and says, are you a team player? Are you going to play on our team? Because you're asking a few too many questions, and I don't think that's good. And then before you know it, they either get on board or, they hit the bricks and they're out the door. So again, People have to understand that moves like this and implementation of this technology is not accidental. With that said, there's two other aspects within that article that I wanted to highlight here on the show. The first, which I found remarkably ironic. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but I immediately started laughing, and then I thought, well, this doesn't surprise me. When I got on the website for an application program that is called SmartPass, SmartPass is one of these, again, student monitoring systems. And it's based on, again, where the student is in the building, how often or how frequently are they in a particular spot. And then, of course, it just tracks them everywhere. And then it keeps a digital profile or a digital fingerprint or a quote-unquote digital twin of these minors as they are forced to walk around and carry around with them all day long what looks like, again, a credit card with a chip on it. Now, that's not an accident either, because that too is designed to pre-program individuals into having credit cards. So that the younger the student is who is carrying around this thing that looks like a credit card, it's again social engineering. It's designed to get that in their head, that having a credit card is a good idea. And as we of course know, that's usury if an individual goes into debt and pays interest on that debt. And then you have these individuals from cradle to grave owing money for the rest of their life because, again, now they're pre-programmed into having what looks like a credit card. So there's that aspect of it also. And people would doubt that, but I'm telling you, it's very intentional. These are very evil people that put all of this together. They know exactly what they're doing. But with that said, when I got on their website at the very top, it quite literally said, one of our latest partners, Charlotte County Public Schools. And I thought, this can't be. Is this really the old school district that I used to teach in Florida? And sure enough, it is. And I clicked on the video, and I put it in the last war video, and I put that same video in the Substack article toward the bottom in the SmartPass section. But when you look at these two administrators, one of which I knew back in the day, and I've even mentioned him before in my whistleblowing experience on Substack during that particular podcast episode also, but his name's Jack Ham. He's in the video as, again, he's now a district lackey, a district employee, but you can see how these individuals just blindly accept these programs. Without question, they are told by their higher-ups, we're going to implement this. And of course, it's sold to everybody, like I said, as being a convenience. When it's furthest from, these things are never convenient. And they're always used against the actual employee also, as if to say, why aren't you tracking so-and-so? Are you paying attention to their SmartPass and how long they're in the bathroom and how frequently they go to the bathroom and a number of other things? Again, these kinds of digital tracking devices that school districts use have been around for a little while. They're not all brand new, but they are new within the last 3+ years, if not a little bit longer, depending on the program. But this, unfortunately, again, is part of the COVID Trojan horse, and this is what is on the inside of it, is that these technology tools were waiting in the shadows to be implemented because it doesn't not only contact trace them, even for illness, so to speak, even though there is no COVID and never was, but it is designed to get them used to being tracked. And so that's the social engineering point also for even later job performance or later employment somewhere else. It's being implemented and used on the most naive, which are not just students themselves and minors, but also the individuals that work in the business. Because as I said, if you ask a question about any of these programs when they're being implemented, you're screwed. Now, here's the bigger problem, and I allude to it again toward the end of the article, and I want to spend just a minute on this also. Not only, of course, do endless educators know that all of this is false and a terrible idea, the most morally sound and the most ethical know that this is not right. But what's happening here is you're seeing the digitization, if I was to use that particular phrase, even if that is a word, You're watching, again, the digital framework be built around these human beings, not just for the purpose of artificial intelligence, but it's for the purpose of replacing them as a profession. So not only is the entire business of education losing money, and they are everywhere, and again, instead of making cuts where they need to make cuts, as I've been over on the show before, and as you've heard numerous audio from people around the country that I've played here on the show say, instead of doing that and firing people and saving that money and a number of other things that they could do with the wasteful spending within their own district. Again, as you heard on Monday's episode, the board member was losing her mind about getting rid of art. Well, we can't get rid of art because everybody needs art and that's important and that's equitable and blah, blah, blah. As I've said on the show before, if you can draw, you don't need art class. If you can do a push-up, why do you have gym class? It's a complete waste of money and a total waste of time. Same thing with band, in my opinion. These particular subjects are recreational. You don't need recreation or recreational courses within school. I understand people would shout at me for that and say, well, my kid performs better because they have gym class. Stop it. Stop it. It's not about one kid, and it's not about a certain group of kids. I'm getting off on a tangent on another subject, but you get what I'm saying. I've been over that before. But the problem here, which even the school employees don't understand themselves, is they're being replaced. That's basically what I'm trying to say. They're being replaced. Because here's the long-term plan, in my opinion. Again, I'm connecting dots here. This thought came to me a while back, and I thought, oh God, yeah, this makes total sense. The same way that a grocery store replaces human beings with self-checkout lines and self-checkout kiosks, the education business has no choice but to continue to digitize itself and technologically advance itself, so they think, in order to ultimately replace human instruction with artificial intelligence instruction. And then, this is the kicker, you no longer need an English-speaking instructor to facilitate technological, whatever you want to call them, curriculums or programs onto students who still attend brick-and-mortar buildings. You need a foreigner. That's it. All you need is a foreigner. You need a body. You don't even need a person who speaks English. You don't need a thinker. You don't need any of that. You just need a body. And so since the business is losing money, how do they receive money? They receive money by putting illegal aliens in the seats of classrooms. So the more illegal aliens that find their way into these environments, the more violent they're going to become, the worse they're going to become. This has been happening already for quite some time. And as we know, white individuals have been replaced within many of these environments, and their families are pulling them out for a variety of reasons, safety being one of them. There are many, of course, which we've discussed before, but safety is certainly one of them. As a result of that, and these individuals, or these environments rather, filling up with individuals who are illegals and potentially not speaking English, you can always have a technological tool that can speak their language and teach them something over that technological tool. So the tool itself doesn't even have to speak English. Are you following me here? Do you see the slippery slope and how in the long term this gets real, real bad? Again, it replaces the entire business, not just with the technology, but the actual individuals who can use the technology that caters to them based on, again, their own language. So teacher education departments at the college and university level, in my opinion, will be some of the first that will be eliminated, and they already are being eliminated. But they'll be gone, not just because of a lack of money and a lack of attendance and a lack of funding. I think it's designed to eliminate them based on the implementation of artificial intelligence at the K-12 level. Because again, if you can find a backdoor way of hiring an illegal alien who maybe even speaks just a little bit of English. That's all you'll need for the future. That's all you'll need as far as a classroom facilitator as they sit, whatever, at the front of the room as the adult in the room, because again, there will be minors in the room all staring at computers like zombies, going through one program after another, one subject after another in their native tongue. And then that will be the future of American education. Now, this is already happening to some extent and has been happening actually for quite some time, certainly over the last, I'd say, 10 plus years. But even so, with the influx of the illegal aliens, we've seen that they'll take over an entire school and they'll kick all the students out. This, of course, has happened in New York. It's happened lots of places. But what else is going to happen is as, again, these schools continue to fill up with illegals, parents are going to pull their children out. Certainly individuals who natively speak English and were born here and are natural-born citizens. These are not going to be enticing environments for those people. So again, my prediction here in the long run is AI, unfortunately, is not going to go anywhere. The more technology that gets implemented within schools, the worse things will become. Because ultimately, the only thing that needs to occur first within American schools is factual curriculum from a historic and scientific standpoint. As long as that doesn't change, and it's not changing, then you're kicking the can down the road by adding games, gimmicks, and nonsense from a technological standpoint, which again, people have to understand is a designed takedown of the whole business. And of course, what would keep this from just existing within the K-12 level? Why not the university level next? You've even heard Dr. Robin McCutcheon on the show here say that Marshall University's business school is already turning itself into a primarily online facility, that their entire building is basically designed for online instruction. Now, I'm not saying that online instruction is problematic. It's quite the opposite. If an individual doesn't want to attend a brick and mortar building and obtain an education and learn freely on the internet, online, again, there's no limit to the amount of information that they're going to acquire, certainly even factual information, if they know where to look and they know where to go and they learn where to look and learn where to go. But even so, they have to maintain these brick and mortar buildings as much as humanly possible, which again means that they have to change what they're doing on the inside from an instruction standpoint. And that's happening. But all of this tracking and tracing and all of these data harvesting programs that exist, all of that is a massive cornerstone in this entire program to eliminate the business and replace it. That's my take. Again, replacement migration and race replacement needs the assistance of the education system. It needs it because you need to reprogram and brainwash individuals who are not from here, who are brand new to this particular country, and then get them to learn and see a number of different things through, again, programmed, quote-unquote, instruction via a computer or a computer program. Again, if you have a room full of foreigners and a 24-year-old white girl standing at the front of the room, that's not likely to be a picture in someone's head that's actually going to be a viably successful environment. It's not likely to be the case. It's also not necessarily an inviting environment. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't already happen, and I'm not saying that some people wouldn't enjoy that. Some people probably would, and that's fine, I guess. But at the exact same time, that's far less likely to occur. And this, of course, is why the well is dry at the teacher education level. Because individuals who are leaving high school are seeing how their high schools are changing. And they're seeing how the environment is changing, and their campuses are changing, and their towns and cities are changing, and they're getting darker. And they don't like it. So they're saying, why do I want to go to a college and learn how to be a school teacher to only return to this environment and try to manage this. No chance. No way. You've also heard me, of course, bring up and even play the actual words themselves from local administrators, in particular the superintendent who lives in my town, or he doesn't live here, but he works here. He's openly advocated for hiring non-whites. Now, of course, this is discriminatory and completely illegal. But at the same time, why is it that that message has been infiltrated now across the board within this business and numerous businesses all across the United States and the world, that they need to hire more brown people? Why? And of course, the fact that they're being allowed to even say that. The fact that they're being allowed to say it should show everybody that there's an agenda there. Because that is the agenda. The agenda is to rub out white people from the business and change the instruction. And they do that a lot of different ways. Some of it, unfortunately, is just flat out bullying in the workplace. Some of it is technological pressure and increased demands that are completely immoral. Again, there's a, we've been over it before here, but there's a spiritual battle taking place here, the likes of which people can't comprehend. Everybody's being tested as to what they will allow and what they are willing to take. And the fact is that the more that these technological tools and surveillance devices and tracking and data harvesting and all of it, the Internet of Bodies and the wireless body area network, that as often as all of that is used on these individuals in these working environments, specifically schools, those employees who put up with it are being tested to see whether or not they will ask themselves, is this morally right? Is this even ethical? And unfortunately, they're slaves. And they're slaves to the dollar, and they're slaves to their environment, and they don't know anything else. And they're more likely to just go along with it because, like I said earlier, they're sold it as if it's a positive thing when in fact it isn't. There is always a scheme. People have to understand this. These moves and these implementations that are made regarding particular tools or methodologies or philosophies or ideologies, none of it, and I mean none of it, is accidental. And also, as I said earlier, which of course they say in these actual websites themselves of these tech groups and these surveillance programs, and as I mentioned in the Substack, they're sold to teachers as if to say this will decrease discipline. That when you implement these programs, it will decrease discipline, it will increase academic success, and so on and so on and so on. And there's zero correlation between those. None. There's no proof that that's the case. And as you've heard me bring this particular article up before also, which I highlight and actually link in the Substack article, which I recommend you give it a read, it's fascinating, is that it's been proven that when school teachers and school employees add these things, these games, these gimmicks, these analytical tools, these computer programs that gauge test scores and everything else, including professional development, quote unquote, that when they do that and teachers look at that information, or districts, again, implement it, or even force it on their educators and tell them that they have to look at this information, or they have to change their instruction or do whatever they have to do to accommodate these particular test scores in these students, that all of that is as effective on increasing academic performance as it is increasing the physical height of a student. It's useless. It would be like, again, saying that holding a basketball can change the weather. That the more you hold a basketball in your hands and the more you squeeze it, the cloudier it will get outside, and then eventually it will rain. But these people don't know this. They don't know that that's completely impossible. That there is no correlation between adding this and academic success. There's none. Not to mention, as I, again, kind of alerted to earlier, it's a threatening tool. It's a tool that is hung over the heads of not just school teachers, but students themselves. It will create more discipline. It will create more conflict. It will create a more unhealthy environment, more noncompliance, more frustration. These are not behaviors of people that can operate inside of a successful environment. And these people, again, don't exist in a successful environment. If these individuals are dissatisfied with their job, which we know that they are in the business of education, if they are angry for one reason or another, frustrated, overwhelmed, addicted to drugs, suffering from mental and emotional disorders, and the same is true with students, forget it. Forget it. Learning inaccurate information and memorizing falsehoods in the curriculum, which of course are state law, all of that becomes impossible. That's why, again, leaving these environments is the only option. You're being replaced anyway if you're still in this line of work. So why not just get out of the way now and bankrupt them in the process? Again, if parents pulled their kids out, as you've heard me say a million times, these environments would cease to exist overnight. They would have no money. The state would come in and say, well, what in the hell is going on? And it would physically get to a point where state officials would start knocking on people's doors and saying, why are you not sending your kid here? Why are you not sending your child here? What is it that's going on? It wouldn't matter. Slam the door in their face, make all the buildings close, and make the state and state departments of education not know what to do. That's how you crush the business. But that's not happening. That would be a perfect world scenario, but that's not happening right now. It's disintegrating, but it's disintegrating from the weight of their own lies, as I've stated before. And it's happening slowly, but it's still happening, which is great. So again, if you're interested in reading that Substack, bounce over there and check that out. And I have a couple of other education stories here to bring that continue to point this out. This was sent to me. These 3 stories were sent to me by our Virginia educator. And this first one's amazing. Keep in mind, this statistic right here that I'm about to share with you is just Virginia. This is just the state of Virginia regarding K-12 schools. This is from vpap.org. It says, back to school, homeschooling. The pandemic, there was no pandemic, saw an increase of more than 40,000 homeschooled students along with a corresponding decrease in public school enrollment. After a slight rebound in public school enrollment, homeschooling is expanding again in the most recent data available. They've got a line graph here, and it shows that, let's see, that in 2018 and 2019, it was practically neck and neck when it came to year in and year out enrollment in both public school and homeschooling. But once 2020 rolled around, you saw over, which they should have maybe stated that, but it's over 40,000 individuals left the public school arena, and over 40,000 just in Virginia alone instantly homeschooled. And what's happened over time, of course, is that's dropped back down to 0, where homeschoolers have decreased, but there's still an uptick even as of, I say most recent based on this chart, 2023. So public school, again, there was an increase, of course, because people were starting to go back to school. The masks were coming off and a number of other things. But even so, that's dipped back down now. And now homeschooling, again, based on the trend here, is increasing yet again, which is great. But you also, of course, as I alluded to earlier, you also have this, which is a massive teacher shortage. And we know all the reasons why that's the case. But it's not just as you would typically hear from sort of your run-of-the-mill educator that it's just discipline. That it's increased discipline, it's increased law-breaking, and it's no accountability. Yeah, that's a big problem. There's no doubt about that. That's always been the problem. That's why there's always been a high turnover rate. And I've used the statistic before, rather, which is still in play, if not worse today, which is if you walk into any American school as an employee or even as a stranger, and you walk in and you look around, within 4 years, half of those educators will be gone. And that's the average. But regarding Virginia, again, school is back in session, and they have a massive teacher shortage and individuals who are at the front of the classroom who are not licensed to even do it. Not that that means anything, because I've been over the fraud of licensure before. But even so, here's some audio from their local 12 affiliate on this very issue regarding Central Virginia schools and their teacher shortage. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Meanwhile, many students in our area are now back in class for the new school year, but in some cases, they are without a licensed teacher.
Yeah, that can be concerning. Obviously, on your side investigators, our on your side investigators, rather, are discovering many divisions are in dire need of teachers. Our Chantel Davis spoke with experts about why we are seeing so many vacancies.
Are you seeing more and more teachers leave the classroom?
Absolutely, we are seeing a lot of teachers leave the classroom.
Class is in session for many students across Central Virginia, but a portion of them are starting the new school year without a licensed teacher.
I'm not shocked, but I'm disheartened. I'm disheartened that we don't have the right conditions in the classrooms to encourage people to come into teaching and to stay into teaching.
I reached out to 7 different localities across the region, discovering although numbers are better than a year ago, hundreds of licensed teachers are still needed. Richmond needs nearly 138 teachers, Henrico 117. Chesterfield, however, refused to give me the exact number of teacher vacancies. Let's say 5% of their classrooms are staffed with substitutes. So I broke that math down. According to the division's website, Chesterfield has around 64,000 students with a classroom ratio of nearly 13 to 1. The amount of teachers they need appears to be a little more than other divisions. Virginia Education Association President Carol Bauer believes she knows the reason behind what some call the Great Exodus.
We've also seen teacher pay not keep up with inflation. We've also seen a lot more demands placed on teachers.
While some teachers continue to leave the classroom, the School of Education at VCU continues to grow.
Well, we're not seeing a decrease in people wanting to become teachers. What we're seeing instead nationally is people are not choosing to pursue that avenue because of the barriers that are in place.
Chantel Davis, 12 on your side.
Okay, first of all, I hope that you could hear the contradiction between those two so-called education experts or whomever. The first gal that you heard at the beginning, her name was Carol Bauer. She's the president of the Virginia Education Association. She, of course, is saying, yeah, there's a problem. Yep, they're leaving the business. This is happening. We have a shortage. There's lots of reasons for it. More demands, more demands, more demands, lower pay, blah, blah, blah. All of that. The next gal, of course, who was asked, her name is Kathleen Rudisil, the interim dean of Virginia Commonwealth University's School of Education. And of course, when asked whether or not she's seeing less people want to be teachers, she said no. She's lying. Or she's intentionally misleading people. And she has to do that. She has to say that. She has to be in that position. And she has to paint a rosy picture of what's going on. For a variety of reasons. Number one, I would say, is simply because she's in a paid position where she has to be agreeable. She has to agree with the people who tell her what to say. Now, she's remarkably naive, if I had to take a guess, but even so, she's an interim dean of a university's school of education. So she has to say that. She can't panic and bounce off the walls and say, all hell's breaking loose. No one wants to be a school teacher. We don't have any students here. This is terrible. Because if she did that, no one would want to show up to their university to train themselves to be a school teacher. So again, they're going to continue to gaslight themselves first. They're going to gaslight the people around them, i.e. the customers or the students and the parents who are paying the tuition to send their children to these colleges and universities to get trained to be a school teacher. And as all of that is happening, the walls are falling in around them, and there's nothing that they can really do to stop it. Again, the Substack article I brought up at the beginning of this episode, do you think that these people can comprehend the depth of this scheme? Can they even grasp it? They don't even know it. I mean, they don't even question it, number one. They don't even know it's taking place. And third, I would say that they can't understand that such a scheme would exist that is designed to upend the entire business. and turn it into something else that does not involve them. Not to mention, as it's been said before regarding artificial intelligence, just to get back to that very quickly, it's cost efficient, is it not? Why would a college or a university need a teacher education program if all you need is the heartbeat or a pulse of a foreigner facilitating a classroom where there's a computer and another foreign student staring at said computer? And it's just a room of facilitation. There's no teaching, there's no dialogue. It's sit, do this, leave. Get up and go, and then come back in the next day. Sit, do this, and then leave. That's it. That's way more cost efficient. It's the kiosk at the grocery store. Same thing. And it's happening, and there isn't anything that can stop this. Let me make this comparison too. It's a bit out there, but it's a spoon bending thing that goes on with regularity. And unfortunately, some people can't even see that there's the spoon there. But even if they do see the spoon, they're still trying to bend it, again, to fit whatever their belief system is or what they believe to be true. It's much like 9/11. I'm going to compare the actual takedown and controlled demolition of the education system right up there with 9/11. It's the same kind of thing. It was a scheme that was put in place a very long time ago to take down those buildings, but also draw out this yarn and this long story in order to trick people into replacing them, of course, killing off a great deal of them, as we know, unfortunately, but also misleading them into false action that will also cost them in the long run. I read a very horrific story about it. It will, again, before I get to that, again, that's the education system also in a nutshell. Because if you were to sit down with someone in the education business who works in the business and look at them and say, do you remember 9/11? They would go, well, yeah, sure. In particular, of course, if they were old enough back then to recall it. Certainly not a new school teacher. They would have just been born at that time. But even so, someone who is, our age or certainly older, they would say something like, well, yeah, I remember that. And, those planes hitting those buildings, I mean, that was terrible. But if you looked at them and you said, there were no planes on 9/11, did you know that? They, of course, would become speechless. They may not even ask you any more questions. And then you look at them and you say, you understand that there was another scheme involved. That not only were there no planes with no passengers on that day, but the explosions came from the inside of the building that were put there by Israeli quote-unquote art students. They were IDF soldiers and a number of other individuals. And that it was all done, again, not just to stoke the flames of war in the Middle East and to create the giant war machine that was created, but also, of course, as a giant insurance scam and to demoralize people and usher in more illegal, whatever you want to call it, illegal laws, policies, a police state, you name it. I mean, again, they would look at you like you're nuts. Which is why if you explain that the takedown of American education is as nefarious and has a very similar controlled demolition scheme to it, they wouldn't be able to grasp it. Even though you could point to very clear dots for them and get them to see that things have not gotten better over time and that things have gotten worse and that teachers are doing more than they've ever done before, administrators are doing more than they've ever done before, students are doing more than they've ever done before, but no one will make that connection as to why that's happening. They'll think it's all just sort of accidental. Well, it's just the business and, people make suggestions and everybody has a job to do and they have to do what they're told or else they'll get fired and blah, blah, blah. But they'll never say who's really pulling the strings. Who's really pulling the brick out of the Jenga tower to watch this entire thing collapse one at a time? While again tricking people into believing that the entire building is stable or that the entire metaphorical building of education is stable when in fact it isn't. And just like in the game Jenga, those blocks keep being put on top of the actual tower. But there's holes all throughout the foundation and the middle and even the upper part of that tower. But they're like, no, everything is fine, everything is fine. nothing to see here, everything is okay. But these bricks are being taken away and then added all of the time. People can't grasp this level of evil. And that's a huge problem. But then again, that's the business, and that's the mind frame of the people who work in the business. The mind frame of the people who work in the business is critical thought is driven out of them on purpose. Just like the students who attend, critical thought and understanding real evil, that it exists even in that environment with everything that they're reading and being told to do and 1,000 other things, that this is all a part of that plan. So I could ramble on it, all day long. But again, you're not going to change the environment and certainly make it better, because the answer is so simple that even if you brought the simplest answer, which would be the answer, to the table for these people, they would look at you like you're nuts. They would laugh at you. And then they would have you ushered out by a school resource officer and kicked to the curb. That's not a business that can survive. And it isn't surviving. And again, there's this aspect of it too, which leads to this story that I read the other day online. It was an individual, and they were basically, again, bringing up 9/11. And they said, we're coming up again on another anniversary of 9/11, and they hate it for a variety of reasons. And they said that one of the reasons that they, of course, can't stand it is because of all of the lies that were told, and all of the lies that existed around that entire day and the days leading up, and of course, the entire time after the fact. They said one of the hardest things, too, is that one of their good friends lived in New York City and was on the rooftop of where they lived watching all of this transpire, or certainly watching whatever, the buildings on fire after they had caught on fire and after the explosions had occurred. And he said that his friend immediately enlisted the very next day in the military, and then went and served overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan or both or wherever it was, and then came back a completely broken human being. But even when they came back, it was when they came back that they started to drink alcohol heavily, and then they started to learn the truth about what actually went on that day. And it drove him to drink himself to death. And that was the end of it. That was the end of his life. So before he died, he realized what had really happened and how manipulated he had become. This is a level of consciousness that people have to arrive at sometime. But at the exact same time, I don't recommend drinking yourself to death, and I don't recommend taking your own life or any of that. And he even said he tried helping his friend and explaining to him, look, fix yourself, get yourself straight, understand that we're out here, that there's lots of us out here who have all been taken advantage of. We've all been lied to. We've all believed things that aren't real. And we've been used and manipulated in 1,000 other things. Now reorganize your life and get back in the fight in a different way to tell people the truth about what's going on. But by then, he said it was too late. So again, it's a tough business because it's a business filled with lies. And it's a business filled with illegality. And if you have people inside of this business who are in charge of children, and parents are sending them to these environments, and they have no idea about the larger schemes that are taking place every single day, as all of these schemes are being rolled out in order, forget it. They're not going to have a chance. They're not going to have a chance. As you've heard me say, and as it's been written in declassified documents and on particular government papers, energy is the enemy's currency. And that's exactly what they seek to use in order to take advantage of us. They want our time. They want our energy. They want us wasting it and believing things that are not real. And then they own us. So we can't let that happen. But with that said, there's also this story which I wanted to mention, also from Virginia. This has to do with Longwood University, which I've brought up on the show before. This was the university that was offering free tuition, if memory serves, just as long as the students who attend, even illegals, if I had to take a guess, that even those individuals end up with not just free tuition, but they have to live on campus in order to receive free tuition. They have to live in student housing. And again, this is how desperate these schools are becoming. But this story gets way deeper. and way more messed up when it comes to their finances. So this was from, let me see the website here, The Rotunda, as it's called, therotundaonline.com. It was titled, Longwood Officials Face Questions. Faculty Concern Over Local Funds Policy Change. This was from about a week ago. It says the following. At the June 7 meeting of the Longwood University Board of Visitors, the board approved changes to the use and investment of local funds, the non-state allocated monies which are often donated to the university. The new policy passed by the Board of Visitors represents a significant change in Longwood University's budgeting approach, as the local funds were previously at the discretion of the academic departments and offices. As a result of the new policy, university officials have greater control over the use of these funds, resulting in concern from faculty members. It goes on here and it says, in an August 1st interview with the Rotunda, Longwood's Vice President of Administration and Finance, Matt McGregor, with university spokesperson and deputy to the president, Matt McWilliams, also present, explained that the policy change was driven by a need for greater harmony, quote unquote, harmony, in how funds are used. The aim of the new policy is to align the use of these local funds more closely with the state allocated funds that Longwood University receives. Yeah, this is shady. This is just a lot of moving money around, changing purses, changing pockets. This isn't good. They're trying to cover up something. There's no doubt about it. In fact, I'm inclined to leave it right there, and when we have our Virginia educator on who knows a great deal about Longwood University and what goes on there and in the neighboring areas, I'm going to have them expand on this particular story and describe a little bit more about what's going on. Again, they're far more knowledgeable about it than I am. And fortunately, they've gotten out of the business, which is great. And now they have, of course, a very clear and clean perspective as to what's happening. So can't wait to have them on, but they will be on eventually. Okay. Let me mention this kind of in conclusion, kind of a shorter episode here today. The Ivermectin debate and the talk that continues to happen. This is interesting because, again, people are really showing a lack of knowledge here on a great many things, in particular something that's remarkably simple. With the comments that Mike Yeadon has now stated regarding ivermectin, and other individuals have written about this, of course, and spoken about this as well, that it's not good for fertility purposes and that it attacks reproductive organs, and, of course, because it's an antiparasitic, that's what it's supposed to do. But even Dr. William Makis is taking a stand against Mike Yeadon and saying that because this is an asinine approach in my opinion, but because there's the new talk of pandemics and quote unquote monkeypox and all this other made up nonsense, which are all symptoms of being jabbed, that's why ivermectin is now being attacked. Well, that's not true. And I don't know where he's getting that rationalization. And who knows, maybe Makis gets kickbacks from the wellness company and all of the ivermectin, of course, that they push on everybody. But such an approach is absolutely ridiculous. So to define this, here's what I want to do. Just very quickly, and this is remarkably common sense, and I'm sure you understand this as well, that I want to describe just the word poison. Because the word poison gets thrown around an awful lot without people understanding what a poison really is. If an individual is taking something that is designed to eliminate a foreign entity in a person's body, which usually, of course, is made up of toxic cells inside of a person's body, if they're taking it for that purpose, and it works, then who's to say it's poison? You can't really say that such a substance would be poison because it wouldn't be. With that said, where it becomes a poison is only if it impacts healthy cells in a healthy human body. But that would imply that a person would have to take said drug or substance if they are healthy. Which then begs the question, who takes drugs when they're healthy? A drug addict would. That's why illegal drugs are illegal drugs, and they're considered poisons and toxins and a number of other things. But you don't take a drug if you're not ill. You don't take a drug that is designed to eliminate a foreign substance in your body if you don't have a foreign substance in your body that's making you ill. Because as we know, if you ingest a drug and you're healthy, it can make you sick. So again, I just find the spoon bending to be remarkably ridiculous, because Mike Eden is right in that if an individual is just taking the drug when they don't need to, then yes, it's going to attack parasites. And men make sperm on a constant basis, and women produce eggs on a monthly basis. So that doesn't surprise anybody. We all know that. But the drug would interpret those cells as being foreign parasites. Therefore, it would attack those organs and those cells within those glands. But with that said, again, I don't know anybody who is trying to conceive or planning out a pregnancy, and they say to themselves, you know what, we need ivermectin, and we need a lot of it, and let's just start taking it just cause. I don't know anybody who does that. But this is part of the problem too with the wellness company and the people who are profiting from the wellness company, is they always stoke the flames of this panic and this division, and you'd better be prepared, you better be prepared. And at the same time, they're the ones profiting from the rollout of ivermectin and the use of ivermectin. Again, that's where Mike Eden is correct. That these individuals, again, are profiting off of a drug for a thing that doesn't really exist. Again, COVID aside, the cool part about ivermectin is that it's been proven to be useful, as we know, for cancer and numerous other inflammatory illnesses, where the cells that are toxic inside of the body become inflamed, or good cells become inflamed and then harm the particular individual. But it just boils down to a very simple fact. Something is poisonous if you're taking it for something for which it's not designed to actually work, and if you're taking something that you don't need to be taking for something that doesn't exist. So those are basically the two definitions of what would constitute a poison. But again, if a person is ill and they do a particular thing or ingest a particular thing or drink a particular thing and it makes them better, well, so be it. Then it worked. It doesn't mean that when you get better, you have to keep taking the particular thing even as a preventative. If a person has an upset stomach and they want to drink Pepto-Bismol, go for it. The person who drinks Pepto-Bismol all day long, even when they don't have a stomachache or indigestion, and they're doing it potentially as a preventative measure, that person's going to become ill. Therefore, it would constitute that Pepto-Bismol is a poison in that particular scenario. But it's not a poison if a person is taking it as it's directed to be taken. So again, people need to be careful with the word poison and throwing the word poison around and saying, and criticizing people, of course, for saying that ivermectin is a poison. Well, yeah, it can be, just like anything can be, if it's not taken the way that it's supposed to be taken. And, of course, for the thing that it's supposed to be taken for. So again, you don't have to take a stance on it one way or another. You don't have to believe Dr. Makis when he says, all these people are now criticizing ivermectin and they don't know what they're talking about. I would venture to guess that, again, Dr. Makis is profiting from the presence of ivermectin, and he's profiting from kickbacks from the wellness company. At the exact same time, you can't criticize Mike Eden because he's basically saying that if you take a drug for something that doesn't exist, then you're poisoning yourself. And that's accurate. There is no COVID. There was no pandemic. Doesn't exist. But again, the good part about the introduction and the realization of hydroxychloroquine and even ivermectin, not to mention the natural form of quinine, which of course is the rinds and peels of grapefruits and lemons and oranges, soaking in water and then boiling and then being consumed orally and swallowed, can have remarkable positive impacts on individuals. But you don't take it if you're not ill. That's all. And these revelations coming to light in the middle of a seeming crisis, certainly a socially engineered crisis, is a good thing. It's the silver lining in all of it, is that in moments like this throughout history, there are always inventions and revelations and eye-opening. It is the Great Awakening, after all. And it certainly is ongoing, and that's not a bad thing. But in the middle of it, of course, unfortunately, there are fraudsters who are trying to profit. And this is disgusting. Which, again, is why I've criticized Peter McCullough on the show before, for a variety of reasons, along with Dr. Malone and endless others, because, again, they're telling people that COVID is real. They're telling people that variants are real. They are not. Viruses do not exist. There is no COVID. There's 5G towers. There's poisonous food, there's poisonous water, there's drugs, and there's, of course, quote-unquote, vaccines and inoculation. And all of that being turned on and ramped up at the same time, well, there's your COVID pandemic right there. That's it. So again, good for Mike Eden for standing up for it and defining what that really is and what that really means. That's a good thing. And it's a nice reminder. Don't take drugs when you're not ill. And don't take them as a preventative measure. That if I keep taking this, I'll prevent this. Again, if you have cancer, which apparently it's been brought to my attention, by the way, and I was corrected on it, allegedly, that if Greg Phillips, who I criticized in the last episode, that if he in fact does have cancer and that's why he's taking ivermectin on a daily basis, good for him. I hope it works and I hope his cancer goes away. Because it's been proven to work for endless people. But that's not the only thing that you take either. You don't just swallow ivermectin on a constant basis in a high milligram dosage on a daily basis and then let that be it. There are other things to take. There are other protocols that include other things along with ivermectin. So there you go. It's just the back and forth. There is a middle road that is the actual singular answer. That's what I always try to seek, and I hope everybody else does the same. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care, and God bless.